Hello and welcome to Off My Shelves, and in this episode we're going to be looking at Locke Key, the Master Editions by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez, volumes 1 to 3, so we will get underway. I may surprise some people by being so upfront and honest right to the start of the video, but I'm going to tell you right from the get-go, I absolutely loved these books. So you're going to get a very gushing, positive review of these three. But before I get too far into the gushing section of this video, we'll go over the build of the Master Editions. Now the Master Editions come in 3 volumes. Each volume contains 2 trade paperbacks in each one. So obviously volume 1 contains volume 1 and 2 of the trade paperbacks, and so on until you get to volume 3. They are oversized kind of hardbacks, and so you're same size as your deluxe editions, same size as, you know, the TMNT collections and things like that. Sewn binding, they come with a ribbon. The paper quality is really thick and glossy and perfect, as you might imagine. Even the cover is embossed and kind of got texture to it. So now to the story of Locke Key, and how do you encapsulate the story like Locke Key? Some people may have watched the Netflix show. I haven't myself. I really wasn't interested. A few years ago I read volume 1 of Locke Key, and again added it to my list and thought, right, I'll get them, but I wanted them in this format, and other things just kept coming up really. And so the other month I obviously bought them because the compendium was coming out, which I'm sure many of you are probably picking up, which is a great way to read this story all in one. I wanted them in this format though, because I really like the editions. And so I started rereading and then delved back into volume 1 and volume 2, and by the end of volume 1 and volume 2 I was absolutely hooked, and then just flew through the other 2 like there's no tomorrow, because I wanted more of the characters and more of the story really. The book really opens up with the murder of Rendell Locke, who is obviously the father of this family. He has 2 sons and a daughter, Kingsley, Tyler, Bode or Bodie, depending on where you're from, and his wife obviously, and they are there in a home, and a gentleman named Sam Lesser and his accomplice come and essentially murder Rendell Locke and try to murder the entire family. It seems on the surface like it's a random act when you start the book, but it turns out that Sam Lesser knows the Locke family because the school he goes to, Rendell Locke is the psychologist of that school, and yeah, he knows Tyler and knows the family, and so he's doing it seemingly for that reason, but he's not. His reasons for doing it are far, far deeper, and he's being influenced by a totally kind of different force, which you get to uncover as you go through. After his death, the family then go to the family home and live with their uncle in Key House in Lovecraft, Massachusetts. I can't say Massachusetts properly. Massachusetts. Yeah, there we go. Those opening pages though, the conflict between Sam Lesser and the family are violent and bloody, and even though the artistry kind of can seem quite cartoony and quite playful, it doesn't pull any punches when it comes to the violence and when it comes to this freaky imagery. Particularly later on, it's got some quite starkly weird and kind of, you know, horrific imagery really. But Key House, as you can probably tell by the name, has many secrets, and the main secret and the main thrust of the plot really is there's many keys in this house, and all these keys have different powers and different abilities. The first one that they find really is a key that opens the door, and then when you walk through it, your soul and you are kind of who you are leaves your body, your dead body's there, and then you're a ghost, but you can only wander around the confines of Key House. And so Bodie, the youngest son, finds a lot of these keys, and the reasoning for that comes in later on, and it drip feeds why this youngest member of the family seems to find all these keys. And it's because one of the ancestors of the Locke family who made these keys made a little kind of stipulation with them that only young people can use them and find them. So once you turn 18, a magic force kicks in and you forget about the keys, and you can't perceive the magic of the keys as you were when you were younger. But the first volume really lays down the foundation of all these different keys. It lays down the groundwork of where these family members are psychologically, how they are processing the death of their father, but then it also introduces the main antagonist, this character that goes by a few different names: Dodge, Lee, Zach. he and she go by different names, because initially she's a woman, but there is, as she explains, a key that you can change your gender, and so she changes her gender at one point and does that a couple of times throughout the book, so she kind of evades capture. Initially the characters are kind of, I wouldn't say one-dimensional, but they don't grip you. Bodhi, the youngest one, kind of grips you because he really is the heart and soul of all the books. But the other characters, Kinsley and Tyler and the mother and even the uncle, they all kind of, they don't really gel or capture much in the initial pages and the initial chapters, because they're not really meant to be. They're going through kind of deep, dark depression, really. But the keys and what they can do and how they can influence the world around them is one of the main draws early on in this series. So at least for me initially, when I was reading it, I wanted to find out, when they found a new key, what did it do, how did it impact, and how could it be used. Volume 2 again was further bringing in those different keys and introducing whole massive amounts of different ones. You know, you've got the beast key that you can turn into an animal, you've got the shadow key that you can command shadows and essentially turn the shadows into whole armies that will do you a bidding. You've got the giant key, which is just amazing. The giant key is used to such amazing kind of heights in this book. You've got the mending key, and there's honestly the amount of different keys in you. You'd think that it would get silly at some point, but honestly, you just enjoy seeing these new keys, these new concepts come in and seeing how they affect these characters. And so by volume 2, the kids really understand as well that there's this malevolent force that's escaped that convinced Bodhi to let him free now, but they don't know that he is changed gender and he is impersonating a new boy at school who's their friend, and so he's there all the time kind of playing the games and playing mind games and manipulating the situation to get at the one key that he wants, which is the Omega key. There's some really great innovation in the storytelling, artistry and writing wise as well, because the artist Gabriel Rodriguez has this brilliant way of kind of setting a scene or location, like in a bedroom or in a corridor, and then the panels on that page or the 2 pages kind of stay in that, but then the characters and the pieces in that picture move around and have movement to it, and I really liked that. It wasn't like close-ups and long shots, it was like one stable shot of a room with the characters and the situation moving in it. Maybe, you know, some stuff happening outside or through a doorway or the characters talking, but the actual scene itself staying there, and he does that quite a lot, and it really come across as an interesting way of telling the story, really, because the more you looked at the scene, the more you could see what was going on in the background and in the foreground, and it kind of gave a really interesting way of depicting the story. But the other thing I found amazing was there was an issue called February, which essentially just follows the characters throughout the month of February, and basically more or less every day they're coming up with a different challenge against the Keys or Dodge. Zach are coming in and basically challenging them, so every day they were coming up against, you know, a new threat, but then they were discovering new keys as well. But it was so kind of throwaway style, like they were finding, like, you know, the Hercules key that if you put it on you turned into this giant strength muscle bound, you know, superhuman, and you have the wing key which gives you wings. It was bringing in all these different kind of keys and elements and other people using past keys, but like literally just chucking them away, so you get like a month in the Locke children's life, and it showcases their constant battle with this dark malevolent force that's trying to get the Omega key. Every single day, every single week, every single day they're fighting against it. They're discovering a key that they can use, but he's discovering another key that he can use against them, and there's this whole battle going on, and I loved this issue. The pacing of it, the story, it twists and turns in so many different directions, and the characters genuinely grow on you, because initially the only one I cared anything about was Bodhi, and as I went through it, by the end I was really fully invested in Tyler and Kinsey, in the mother and the uncle, who all of which they don't really make an impact, but then when you get to the end you really appreciate and like those characters for different reasons. I think I did anyway. Like I say, I won't talk too much about volume 3 and the story behind volume 3 because it is a massive spoiler going into volume 3, or too much at all, to be fair. But I will say that volume 5 of this, because it's obviously volume 5 and volume 6 in one book, volume 5 is pretty much the entirety, is the backstory to the origins of the Keys, to what happened in Key House where they stay in. So it goes back to the 1700s and lots of other time periods, and it goes back into the backstory of Brenda Locke. So certainly, if there are any overhanging questions that you have about the Keys, about the characters that came before the Locke kids that you're following initially, they do get answered. And then in volume 6 essentially it's just a big build up to the all out finale really, and volume 6 is great because it just raises the stakes massively and just keeps you on the edge of your seat. It does exactly what a finale of a series should do. But yeah, I can't really go into Locke and Key too much more of the story because, again, the most important, the most interesting part of this was discovering the characters and discovering the world for myself really, and then hopefully rereading and getting more from it on the second or third readings. But certainly if you were to go into this and to start peeling back the world and the characters, I would 100% kind of think that you would be sucked in as much as me really. But obviously the artwork might be slightly polarising on some level because I think some people might not like that art style massively, but ultimately for me it was great on every level, and it is one of the best reads I've had in a long while, to be honest. It is without a doubt one of the hottest days of the year when I'm recording this, so if I babble a bit too much in this one, apologies, and thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.